Dear Selected One, please concentrate on this message at this moment. Stop ignoring the subtle sense you've been feeling, which suggests that something is going to change. The upcoming adjustment will not be revealed. No warning, countdown, or dramatic sign in the sky will be issued. It will arrive unexpectedly, and everything will change in an instant. There is just one reason why the enemy is working overtime. He is aware of the imminent confrontation with your existence but is unable to stop it. As a result, his goal is to prevent you from advancing. He's trying to keep your concentration, tiredness, and self-doubt for a short period of time so you don't notice when it happens. However, you will not ignore it. Not today. Everything ends this week. The long-standing stillness, waiting, and inquiry have taken on a permanent quality. However, this should be heard clearly. It is not ending owing to timing or fate. It is coming to an end as a result of your previous acts. Because you repeated prayers while no one was paying attention. As a result of the foundation you established when all of your internal resources wanted to be liberated. Remember that moment this week when you were on the verge of saying something you would later regret? When an unforeseen scenario arose and you felt compelled to respond, defend yourself, or provide an explanation. However, something stopped you from proceeding. You kept your quiet. You left the premises. You release it. You saw that as a sign of vulnerability. You were under the assumption that silence would cost you anything. However, I'm here to inform you that quiet was a weapon. You weren't losing ground at that moment of constraint. You signed the final document. That action successfully ended the enemy's presence in your scenario. You didn't inflict any damage. You have finished all tasks. This message was not discovered coincidentally. The algorithm did not route you to this place. It was completed by God. This is a divine appointment that was predetermined before the planet's formation. Furthermore, you arrive at the right time and for the right reason. Please refrain from scrolling. Avoid allowing this to play in the background while you are doing something else. Your future self is encouraging you to attend this event, because if you leave now, you will be gone before the verdict on your existence is reached. I will send you the legal decree in the next few minutes, canceling all of the assignments that the adversary has launched against what is to come. I will show you the exact moment this week when you unwittingly activated your breakthrough. Finally, I will give you the statement that seals this open door shut, so that nothing the enemy can do will reverse what God has already set in action. Make sure to stay until the very last moment. I'm aware of the sensations that have remained for the past 72 hours. The atmosphere around you has been oppressive, similar to the unexplainable and unrelenting pressure that sits on your chest or the hush that precedes the entrance of a major event. It's possible that you've been feeling one step behind this week, as if you're traveling through a dense and invisible substance while those around you move in a normal time frame. Perhaps you woke up at 3 a.m. and found yourself lying in the darkness, your heart racing at an abnormal rate, and a sensation you couldn't explain but couldn't ignore. You have the impression of being suspended, as if you are caught between the life that was and the life that was promised, and you can't see either shore from your current vantage point. The adversary has been whispering a specific untruth in that gap. He's been informing you that the upcoming event has been postponed due to your conduct. He has been rehearsing a moment in your memory over and over again. The moment you retreated, became silent, stopped pushing, and simply let go. He has also referred to that occasion as your most major blunder. He has been informing you that your silence, immobility, and refusal to stand up have resulted in the loss of exactly what you have been pushing for. However, I need your comprehension of the specific remarks made in the text about this particular point. In Nahum, chapter 1, verse 9, it is written, "What do you conspire against the Lord? He will put an end to it. Affliction shall not occur again. Have a listen to it. Affliction shall not occur again." The adversary wants you to believe that you are locked in a cycle. He wants you to believe that the clock has been reset and you are making a new start. He wants that deception to become so ingrained in your brain that you no longer expect its coming. However, that is not the cycle you are now engaging in. That is the conclusion. The sensation you are experiencing is not caused by punishment putting pressure on you. This marks the end. It is the weight of an event that has ended and cannot be recreated. It is the final tension in a cord that is just one breath away from snapping. What you called your moment of failure was anything but. It was the ultimate maneuver. Heaven has been honing this strategy over time. You have not disqualified yourself. You did not postpone the blessing. You did not change the path of events that God started. You've successfully completed it. They are also imminent. Without prior notice. Without any previous notice. Without enough time to organize. However, there is no need to make any preparations. You're already prepared. You've already finished the mission. The only remaining task is to receive. And now that you are aware that you are prepared, and the truth has been revealed that you have already finished the final surgery, the following adjustments will take place. Because readiness is not passive. Readiness is not the act of sitting calmly with your hands folded, expecting something from paradise to fall at your feet. Readiness is a spiritual state that is actively desired. It is the decision to stop practicing the delay and start acting from the reality of what has already been determined. It is the daring posture of someone who understands that the battle has already been won in the invisible realms and is now simply waiting for its manifestation on the earthly plane. This active readiness is analogous to a seed emerging from the soil with absolute internal certainty of its mission, a ship starting to sail, or a spring uncoiling. Even as your eyes continue to see the process unfold, a divine whisper in your spirit announces, "It is finished." You are no longer simply expressing aspirations. You have knowledge. You no longer expect authorization. You hold a position of authority. This adjustment in posture allows the divine to move, creating an energy current that draws the future into the present. This is a dynamic alignment, not a rigid expectation. Consider the events that occurred on Mount Carmel with regard to Elijah. The parched, cracked, and thirsty country was a result of years of drought, caused by spiritual disobedience. The skies were an unrelenting, uncompromising blue, defying any chance of rain. There was no meteorological indicator, no change in atmospheric pressure, and no slight wind carrying the odor of dampness. Elijah told Ahab to get up and eat before the rain came, since he could hear the sound of an abundance of rain before a single cloud arose in the sky, or any natural evidence that anything was going to change. He heard it before it appeared in the natural world. He sensed it in his spirit. Imagine the daring and steadfast conviction in his voice as he stated this to a monarch who had become accustomed to false prophets and empty promises in the middle of a desert environment. He served as the sole channel of heavenly revelation, tuning his spiritual ears to a frequency beyond human comprehension. And that hearing, that willingness to declare something that had not yet happened, was not hubris. It was a matter of alignment. It demonstrated a remarkable sensitivity to God's will and heart. He wasn't making something out of nothing by saying it. He was simply repeating the divine decree that had already been established in the spiritual courts, agreeing out loud with what heaven had already determined. He was acting as a supernatural witness, attesting to a fact that had already occurred. He then began to pray. There are 7 occasions. Each prayer is a steadfast summons to heaven, a new profession of faith, and a stronger anchor. It was a rhythmic, confident invitation, not a desperate supplication. On the 7th occurrence, a cloud the size of a man's hand appeared on the horizon, a faint whisper at the edge of vision. That small cloud sufficed. It was a concrete emblem of an unseen certainty, a prophetic foreshadowing, and a punctuation mark in the vast, empty sky. Elijah was aware of the beginning. He saw not just a cloud, but the divine vindication of God's strength, a torrent that would quench a nation's hunger, and the end of a drought. His spiritual perspective elevated the minor to the level of significance. You are currently located on your cloud, which is the size of a man's palm. This first undeniable ripple in the calm surface of your waiting, this new manifestation, this little flare of hope. Currently, the apparent size may appear tiny. It may appear to be insignificant, barely worthy of remark. It may only appear to be a faint outline, a shadow of future grandeur rather than the entire extent of what was promised. The question is not whether you can see the entire sky at this time, because it is currently shrouded by the thunder and lightning of the breakthrough. The key is whether you can discern the importance of that slight movement, and whether your spiritual sense is sharp enough to detect the seed of destiny. The adversary, through his subtle whispers, will use the briefness of the beginning to perplex you about the significance of the conclusion. He will point to that flimsy cloud and claim that it is the only existence, a fleeting aberration that will fade into obscurity. He will tell you not to overestimate your expectations, to temper your ambitions, and to prepare yourself for the inevitable letdown. He will mask discouragement with the deceitful language of wisdom and encourage you to be realistic, return to reality, and accept less than your heart's actual wishes. He will question your spiritual conviction by saying that your senses are limited. He wants you to dismiss the first drop as merely an impact, rather than recognizing it as the precursor of a downpour. However, you were never intended to be realistic. Instead, you were expected to remain steady in your belief in the facts you were provided. John, the vernacular of the realm is faithful, whereas the language of the fallen world is realistic. Your calling goes beyond the logical bounds of the natural world. A higher reality, a deeper truth, is the cornerstone of your mission, the immovable word that spoke to your spirit. And what you heard was not a rumor, a fleeting thought, or a product of your mind. The sound you heard came from the voice that spoke light into darkness, commanded existence where there was nothing but vacuum. The same voice that inspired the existence of stars and galaxies with the single mention of a name, referring to things that were not what they seemed. The same voice that has spoken over your life since before you had a name, intertwining your fate with the fabric of time and eternity. This is your Creator's voice, the architect of your destiny, and his word does not return to him void. It is capable of fulfilling itself. The following portion digs deeper, as there is a phenomenon occurring beneath the surface of your circumstances that requires your understanding before the door is fully opened and the floodgates of benediction are completely released. The adversary understands that if he is unable to stop the blessing or directly rescind the divine plan for your life, his next equally cunning strategy is to corrupt the manner in which you receive it. He does not have to reschedule the upcoming function. He only needs to taint it. When it arrives, he just ensures that you see it through the wrong lens, a warped perspective that reduces its force and pleasure. Through the lens of fear, you are constantly on the alert for its demise or retreat. Through an unworthiness lens, you are prevented from fully embracing it because you are taught to believe that you do not genuinely deserve it. By applying a filter that says that this is too wonderful to be true, it is impossible for it to last, and something will definitely go wrong, leaving you in a state of constant dread and distrust. These filters are more than ordinary inconveniences. They are spiritual toxins designed to thwart heaven's good intentions. Because a blessing received in dread becomes a burden, a huge weight on your shoulders that constantly threatens to crush rather than raise you. What was intended to be a source of freedom has now become a new source of captivity, a treasure that you are terrified of losing. When you enter a door in a state of panic, it transforms into a prison, with the open threshold becoming a set of bars, as your fear prevents you from entering the expansive freedom that lies beyond. You enter, yet your heart is still wrapped in the preceding season of restriction, a season of favor that begins without a firm understanding of one's identity in Christ will surely be damaged by the person to whom it was bestowed, namely oneself. If you don't comprehend your divine appointment, you'll mismanage, misuse, or even destroy the same skills that are supposed to move you forward. This is what happened with Saul. Samuel the prophet chose him from obscurity and anointed him with oil, representing divine appointment. He was given a great mandate and an exceptional opportunity to rule God's people, cementing his position as Israel's first monarch. However, he never fully accepted the persona for which he was summoned. His foundation was fragile, as it was based on uncertainty rather than divine assurance. He continued to compare himself to others, particularly the fearsome David, allowing external views to influence his mental condition. He continued to perform for the audience, seeking their acceptance and validation, rather than firmly establishing himself in his role and accepting the identity that God had bestowed upon him. He was a monarch who wore his crown for the applause, not the profession. David's anxiety became his compass the moment he arrived, a young shepherd kid whose star was beginning to shine, and the favor he had received appeared to transfer to someone else. This primeval anxiety, this gnawing uneasiness, impacted every decision, ruined every relationship, and tainted his whole being. And a king ruled by dread becomes a tyrant, resorting to violence in response to perceived threats, manipulating circumstances, and eventually attempting to eliminate the individual who is supposed to carry out the next step of God's plan. Saul's identity was never formed in his spirit, not because God had removed his calling. He was never completely sure that he deserved the crown, and as a result, he became subservient to others' ideas, losing sight of the heavenly mandate that guided his existence. His fear created a self-fulfilling prophecy about his own demise. Heaven is asking you to take a counterintuitive step, going against the grain of cultural standards and possibly even your long-held coping strategies, before this open door becomes everything it is meant to be, and you completely enter the expansive panorama of your promised land. Heaven is begging you to stop shrinking, to stop degrading yourself by becoming smaller, quieter, less conspicuous, and less dazzling in an attempt to fit into molds that were never meant for you. Stop apologizing in advance for the favors, opportunities, and anointing that will unmistakably distinguish you in your life. To stop trying to make others comfortable with the bigger, more true, and more powerful version of yourself that is emerging. You have spent an inordinate amount of time dimming your light, concealing your talents, and suppressing your voice in order to keep those around you from feeling the weight of your burden, as well as from feeling overshadowed or uncomfortable by your ascent. You've walked on eggshells of your own making, concerned about the implications of your own blossoming. God has finally declared that it is over. The season of suppression has ended. It is now time to rise to your full potential and take on the role that you have been divinely assigned. You were not meant to squeeze into the room. Your anointing was intended to affect the ambiance of the room. The goal is not to blend into the existing decor. You are the catalyst for transformation, the perfume of Christ, and the light that shines through the shadows. Your simple presence is supposed to raise the spiritual temperature, disrupt the status quo, and bring in a divine frequency. Accept the glorious disruption of your anointing. Please stick with me for the rest of the narrative, because this is the part that most people aren't expecting, and it frequently causes a slight sense of unease. The next event is more than just a benefit. It's an opportunity for exposure. The wealth, influence, new connections, or enlarged platforms that God is about to bring into your life will show the state of your heart. It will cast a powerful divine spotlight on your genuine spiritual state, hidden beliefs, unhealed scars, and motivations. And this is not a threat. Rather, it is a gift, a profound act of divine grace, since you are unable to carry the weight and magnitude of the new task with the limiting beliefs, unresolved anxieties, and unexplored reasons you have been harboring. The capacity must expand before the blessing's arrival. Otherwise, the blessing will arrive with nowhere to go, akin to water striking a closed vessel, overflowing out and causing waste. This exposure is God's compassionate yet stern way to prepare you for the ongoing stewardship of the blessing, in addition to the blessing itself. It is a summons to contemplation, a heavenly purification that lays the groundwork for greater magnificence. Consider the widow with the oil in 2 Kings as a painful example of this idea. Her sons were about to be taken as slaves, and she was on the verge of despair, facing destitution. Elisha did not create the oil out of thin air or get it from another source. He focused her look within, questioning her sense of lack, and questioned about the contents of her home. She had almost nothing but a small jar of oil, which appeared to be a scant supply, hardly enough to get her through another day. However, he told her to collect as many empty vessels as she could find. This was the essential instruction: expand expectations and make as much space as possible to push her beyond her imagined limits. Later, he told her to pour. This was the act of obedience, a leap of trust into the unknown. Furthermore, the oil did not expand during her idle pondering. Despite the fact that this was a necessary prior step, the vessels did not proliferate as she gathered them. While she was planning or strategizing, it did not spread. It multiplied while flowing in the dynamic movement of faith. And it continued to pour supernaturally until she ran out of vessels to fill, or until her receiving capacity was exhausted. The boats in that story are not just physical containers. They're an effective metaphor for your potential. They are the spiritual containers that you bring to God, your expectations. They represent the depth of your faith in divine supply and the breadth of your imagination. Heaven is currently expressing to you that it is time to gather more vessels. It is time to widen your expectations, break through the hardened soil of limited ideas, and allow the seedlings of overflowing faith to grow. God's provision is endless, His generosity limitless, and His wellspring inexhaustible, just as oil will never run out. The only constraint on the miraculous, the only thing that can stop the flow, is a lack of vessels. It is the limit you have set for the amount of information you are willing to receive. God's willingness is not the source of your limitations. The container you have been asking Him to fill is a reflection of your limitations. He is not bound by your circumstances. He is only limited by your convictions and the capacity you demonstrate to receive. As you listen to this, you are experiencing an undetectable reorientation of your spirit, a lightening of old chains. As a result, another event is required to take place. This is the genuine tipping moment, since the vast majority of people come perilously close to earning their biggest reward only to back out at the last minute. They approach the threshold, nearly tasting victory, feeling the warm sun on their skin, and smelling the promise. However, they have disqualified themselves at this point. They create explanations for deferring, postponing, and withdrawing from the very thing they have long sought. They say things like, "I am nearly there. I just need a little more time to prepare," or "maybe next season." And those phrases are brimming with sound counsel. They create a misleading facade of humility and wisdom. However, they are dread with a vocabulary upgrade, clever rationalizations that mask a deeper unwillingness to fully engage with the unknown grandeur of God's plan. They are a self-imposed prison of constant preparation and procrastination wrapped in religious jargon. They are the enemy's most stealthy tactic for keeping you from crossing the border. You have been living under a hidden agreement that looks to be faith, but it has served as a ceiling, a transparent barrier that has kept certain blessings just out of grasp. This understanding will be disclosed in a moment. And once you've seen it, exposed it to the light of reality, you'll understand why certain things have been circling but not landing, breakthroughs that appeared impending but never occurred. However, this must first become fully, thoroughly, and irreversibly established in your being. You've been viewing your preparation as an ongoing process that requires another step, lesson, or revision. You've been in a constant condition of almost readiness, holding your breath on the edge and never quite exhaling into the fullness of the moment. God is asking you to tackle this with uncompromising honesty. What is the point at which preparedness is utilized as a reason to avoid taking action? When does the refining season, which is designed to shape and build you, transition into a spiritual sanctuary that provides a sense of security from the responsibilities of your calling? Moses spent 40 years in the desert, where he prepared, tended cattle, and faced everyday life, eroding the Egyptian prince's identity. However, there was a moment when the blazing bush arrived, ablaze with divine flames. God said, "Now, not in a few more years when you have accumulated more wisdom, not when you feel more confident when every shred of doubt has vanished." Now, Moses continued to argue and try to reason with the Almighty. Nonetheless, he continued to ask, "To whom should I depart?" He continued to try to disqualify himself from his own job by citing his perceived shortcomings and lack of eloquence. In the face of heavenly command, he relied on human reasoning. However, heaven will not wait for you to feel capable. Heaven expects your response, a booming, clear acknowledgement of the divine call, even if your voice trembles and your limbs shake. Your obedience, rather than your sense of preparation, is required. And you've been saying yes in shards, fractured affirmations sprinkled throughout your journey, softly in the dark, in prayers that seemed to vanish into the ceiling, unnoticed and unacknowledged. These were timid acts of surrender, mumbled longings, and silent promises. What you couldn't see or perceive from your earthly perspective was that heaven was gathering all of those broken yeses, hesitant assents, and sobbing agreements. They were being gathered, organized, and blended into a single, powerful moment of fulfillment that would seal your breakthrough. Additionally, the event has already occurred. You're already on the other side without even realizing it, much like crossing an unseen finish line. The previous act finished with the declaration. You are not currently in the wilderness, preparing for or going through a challenge. You are entering the promised land, the season of fruitfulness and manifestation. The wilderness has served its purpose. The preparation is complete. It is the beginning of your career, the crossing over. And here is the part that no one wants to hear because it requires the most fundamental self-confrontation, naked honesty that exposes layers of self-protection. The majority of people reach for this part and silently click away, averting their attention because it is too exact and incisive to feel comfortable with. It calls into question the narratives we've built around our issues. The hurdle to fully realizing God's promises is not the enemy's assignment against you, despite the fact that his attacks were legitimate. Although the sorrow was evident, it was not the betrayals you faced. The problem is not the closing of doors, the departure of individuals, or the prolonging of seasons beyond their intended length. The products were genuine. It was challenging to complete such responsibilities. They shaped you, refined you, and may have even forced you to your knees. But they were not the block. Yes, there were hurdles, but they were not the most significant ones. This has been the barrier. You have been holding to God's promise while yet believing that you are the exception. This is the deeply rooted, cunning untruth that has snared you. You believe this is something God does for individuals. You are convinced by the remarkable stories of healing, sustenance, and breakthrough that you hear from others. You have faith in the Scripture, which proves its authority and relevance. You believe that breakthroughs are true, divine favor is genuine, and God intervenes in humanity's affairs in extraordinary ways. You hold these views for the benefit of others, specifically the virtuous, chosen, and extraordinary. However, beneath the layers of intellectual acquiescence and outward faith, there is a subtle, secret agreement, a subconscious contract that you have signed with skepticism, stating that people like you do not receive the full version. It is your personal history of disappointment, past mistakes, perceived shortcomings, unique hardships, and something in your tale that earns you the asterisk or fine print. Almost, but not quite. The person for whom the general rule of God's favor contains a specific restricting exception. And that agreement has served as a spiritual ceiling, an imaginary barrier hovering just above your head, allowing blessings to circle but never fully land. It wasn't because God approved of it. He never did. He did not sign the contract of limitation. However, by continuing to sign it, you were indirectly supporting it every time something did not go as planned, every time a prayer went unanswered, and every time you saw someone else achieve something you had thought was out of reach for you. You took that as confirmation of the lie, a validation of your exceptional status, rather than seeing it as a test of your ability to maintain your posture, to remain solid in the face of seeming contradiction and delayed pleasure. After Mount Carmel, return to Elijah. He had just witnessed a stunning exhibition of divine might, including the summoning of fire from heaven and the defeat of 450 Baal prophets. He had anticipated the advent of rain, heard its sound, and watched the little cloud grow into a deluge. He had witnessed the most spectacular and incontrovertible evidence of God's intervention in his generation. Jezebel, a solitary human ruler, then offered a terrifying message of impending death. Additionally, he fled. He fled and slumped under a juniper tree, his thoughts filled by terror and misery. He said, "Enough." In the midst of his greatest victory, he exclaimed, "I am the only one left, believing the lie of isolation and self-pity." He had just proved God's might to an entire nation. He too felt like an outlier, singled out for punishment, exhausted and alone. God did not rebuke him. God did not condemn him for his anxiety or lack of faith. God provided the food. He was allowed to sleep by God. He provided sustenance and calm to an exhausted soul. Then, after he had been nourished and restored, God replied, "The journey is too great for you. Get up and eat another meal." He proposed that the upcoming journey, the next stage of his mission, required a spirit and strength that the current, drained version of Elijah lacked. The version of you that has been living in fear, isolation, and the silent certainty that you are the exception to the promise is unfit to face the path ahead. The baggage of doubt and unworthiness keeps you from grasping the enormity of what is to come. However, you are not being asked to complete this work because of the strength that has allowed you to resist these hidden agreements. You are being encouraged to eat, receive, allow something in, and be divinely nourished and repaired before attempting to journey somewhere or carry the burden of the new season. This is not a matter of personal effort. It refers to the infusion of divine force. Because the upcoming events will require a version of yourself that has been nourished, deeply satisfied, and sustained by the bread of life and the living water that has been restored, healed from the internal wounds and lies that have eroded your identity, that has stopped avoiding your true self and has begun to receive the fullness of God's love and acceptance. And the process of receiving begins at this precious, critical point. It begins when you stop seeing yourself as an exception, ultimately pull up that hidden pact of limitation, and recognize that everything God uttered, every promise, every decree, every word of hope and destiny was said to you. Not surrounding you, nor in close proximity to you, but immediately, personally, and emotionally linked to you. You're the designated recipient. The conclusion is as follows. This is the decree that has been read over your life in the courts of heaven, stamped with divine power and unchangeable truth. As a result, you are currently hearing it on earth in order to facilitate the release of what is bound above, allowing the spiritual truth to ultimately emerge in your physical experience. This symbolizes a breach in the spiritual ceiling. The floodgates have opened. Your assignment was canceled. Every strategy, every nefarious plot designed to thwart, steal, or destroy is suddenly rendered null and worthless. The delay has ended. The waiting area is now empty, as the season has ended. As the hush ends, a new sound emerges, a symphony of healing and breakthrough. Right now, what is approaching you is tailored to you, not to someone else or as a blessing intended for another. Not an unborn version of yourself, a flawless future self, but your name. In the now, just as you are. You're prepared. You're deserving. Now, place your hand on your chest and say this aloud. Since declarations are more than just emotional exercises, they are spiritual coordinates. They are active orders that notify heaven of your exact position and the substance you are endorsing, thus harmonizing your earthly reality with the divine. They serve as signposts in the invisible domain. And the deal you are about to make is not a wish. It is not a prayer for something that one does not have. It's a powerful statement of an established truth, a pronouncement of what's already been decided. Please articulate this at this time. I am not the exception. I am the recipient of this communication. I have collected all of my secret prayers, and nothing has been squandered. The silence I experienced was not suggestive of desertion. It was an act of preparedness. The restraint I showed was not indicative of weakness. The final act sealed my realization. I released any agreements that said I was too late, too faulty, or too far behind. I dismantled every ceiling I built as a result of my dissatisfaction. I fully embrace this season without apology, reluctance, or anticipating permission that has already been granted. The entrance is currently unlocked. I am currently traversing it. What God has decided for my life is final, cannot be changed, and cannot be postponed beyond this moment. I've received it. The entire thing. I am prepared. Additionally, I am sufficient. If this message struck a chord with you in a meaningful way, if you felt a shift in your emotions while reading or listening, even if you can't fully define it, don't let that sensation fade into the background noise of your day. That emotion is data. It serves as confirmation. Share this with someone who, like you, is caught between what was and what was promised, and they didn't find out by chance. In addition, provide a declaration in the notes rather than in the algorithm. Inform God that you received this. Inform the adversary that you are aware of the deception. The act of acknowledgement is one of the sealing's components. Please do not overlook it. Beloved one, examine your essence right now. For the past 7 days, you've felt pressure in your thorax. The unexpected, unexplained anxiety that wakes you up at night when the house is quiet. Avoid combating it. That's not an assault. Your spiritual sensor detects a significant frequency shift before your eyes do. God is issuing a warning. The billionaire transition is fast approaching your timeline. However, pay close attention, as this is the portion that has not been disclosed to you. This isn't a lottery win. This is not a game of chance. This remuneration applies retroactively to military personnel. Heaven is releasing a backlog of resources from your lineage, including wealth stolen from your ancestors, and placing it in your possession for a specific purpose. You have been appointed as the kingdom's financier. God is not sending this overflow to provide you with comfort. He's transmitting it to make you a threat to the enemy. However, this is a cautionary tale. Your life will be disrupted if you try to keep this high-voltage blessing with a destitution mindset. The protocol is required. The clearance code is required, and if you remain with me, I will immediately provide you with the vault keys. Before we proceed, it is critical that you understand the specific nature of the events taking place in the spirit domain. Because the majority of people are looking for a quick cure or a magic spell to pay their rent, they will most likely skip over this article. Nonetheless, you remain present because your spirit recognizes the unusual nature of the situation. In the next few minutes, I'll reveal the 3-account system designed to prepare you for the excess. I will reveal the 5 distinct spirits who seek high-level prosperity in order to keep them out of your home. At the end of this video, we'll hold an activation ceremony to wrap your life in a new financial mantle. Please avoid skipping any of this. This is not entertainment. This is your transfer briefing. Power cannot be managed unless safety protocols are followed. As a result, I require immediate clarification on who is willing to assume this responsibility. Who is among the remnant that God is preparing to serve as the treasurers of the end times? If that is the case, please subscribe to this channel right away to ensure that you are in sync. Press the like button to signal to the spiritual realm that you are awake and attentive. In addition, please submit a statement in the remarks section below. Do not just type words, type them with purpose. Write, I am the container. Execute the action immediately. Prove to the adversary that you are no longer operating in the shadows. Now, let's look at your actual location. I'm curious about the moment you kept hidden from everyone else. A moment that makes you feel ashamed, even though it should not. It is 2 a.m. You are awake while the rest of the world sleeps. You could be perched on the edge of your bed or in a parking lot, looking at the steering wheel of your car. The sole source of illumination is the blue radiance emitted by your smartphone. You're currently viewing a digital bank statement. You're feeling a physical knot in your stomach as you scroll through a PDF of invoices. It is extremely cold. It is constricted. It feels like a heavy stone resting at the base of your stomach. You look at the figures, and they are illogical. You are conscientious in your work. You engage in prayer. You contribute by tithing. You offer assistance to others. You have a heart of gold. However, the calculations are inconclusive. You feel like a lion confined in an inadequately sized enclosure. You are consumed by a desire to build orphanages, provide financial assistance to churches, help your family, and transform your community. You are currently trapped in a $10 reality despite having billion-dollar dreams. This disconnect generates a specific type of discomfort. It represents the humiliation of powerlessness. So, you ask God, why? Why did you give me this vision if you weren't going to provide me with the necessary resources? Why did you elevate me to the status of a spiritual monarch while allowing me to live as a pauper in the physical world? Is this an act of retribution? Was there an error on my end? Please listen carefully. Select individuals. The anxiety you feel at the exact moment, the frustration that drives you to yell. I'd like you to reframe the situation at this point. This is not indicative of failure. That indicates a lack of alignment. Your internal frequency has already changed to the billionaire setting, which is why you are in agony. However, your external reality remains in poverty mode. 30. The heat is caused by the friction between your identity and your location. Anxiety is not the cause. Kinetic energy is waiting to be released. You see, the world informs you that you are concerned about your financial situation. However, the Holy Spirit is informing me that you are agitated because you are pregnant with a purpose that requires resources that you do not currently have. You are not experiencing financial difficulties. You don't have enough momentum. You are a conduit designed to transport an ocean. However, you are currently only observing a small amount. This void you are feeling is actually the groaning of a vessel pleading for a refill. Pay close attention to the Hebrew term used in Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 18. But remember the Lord your God, for He is the one who grants you the capacity to accumulate wealth. It is not just financial. The term coach means vigor. It represents vigor. It indicates the ability to persevere. Means the vigor of a wild ox. God doesn't simply give you money. If He provided you with currency without coach, the gold would be so heavy that it would break your back. He gives you the internal structure, capacity, and power to create and sustain wealth. As a result, God is not examining the debt while you are sitting at 2 a.m. and examining the invoices. He is examining the structure of your spirit. He's inspecting your coach. He is conducting an assessment of your abilities. Due to the upcoming opening of the floodgates, the retroactive military payment is now being processed. The billionaire transition isn't a metaphor. The movement of resources is the case. However, the following is a perilous reality that must be addressed before the transfer. You believe that the issue is a lack of sufficient income. You believe that if God deposited $1 million into your account right now, all of your problems would be solved. You're mistaken. You would not be saved if God released that amount of heavy, high-voltage resources into your life at this time, given your current spiritual infrastructure. It would be a complete disaster for you. For what reason? Why? Because the problem isn't with the supply. The container is the problem. Imagine you're praying for rain while holding a container. You're asking God to send a flood. However, you are unaware that your container has a hole in its bottom. A void caused by generational trauma, concealed fears, and mindset. By failing to understand the true purpose of this money. If God responds to your prayer and sends rain at this time, the force of the flood will rip the bucket handle off. The water will pass directly through you. You'll be left with a broken heart and damp palms. As a result, The first stage of this billionaire transition involves refraining from requesting more precipitation. It's repairing the container. The breach needs to be identified. The cavity needs to be repaired. D. We must fortify your vessel's walls to ensure that it will not split during the transfer. Furthermore, the disclosure is not as you perceive it. The problem isn't the excessive spending on coffee. It is a far more profound issue. Something that has been embedded in your subconscious since childhood. Bad spending habits are not the cause of the leak in your bucket. Your theology is the cause of the breach. The lottery mindset has specifically infected the spiritual community. I'd like to address the unadulterated raw thought that has been circling in the back of your mind. I am aware of its presence because I have taken the same seat as you. You examine the reports. You investigate social media platforms. And you see people who are less spiritual, less benevolent, and possibly even more evil than you, living in absolute abundance. They have automobiles. The buildings are theirs. They are free. And a voice in your head whispers, God, why them? What is the reason for your blessing on those who are unaware of your name? While I am here serving you, praying for you, and fasting for you, and struggling to keep the lights on, you are secretly wishing for a rescue operation. While traveling, you mentally practice scenarios. Imagine you're checking your bank account and come across a mysterious deposit. You envision a distant relative bequeathing you an inheritance. You anticipate that God will activate the lottery for you. You believe that if God just gave you the money, everything would be fine. Please listen carefully. Select individuals. That is the source of the disclosure. The transfer has yet to take place because the expectation is for a magical rescue that requires no preparation. Because you would not be in command of that prosperity if God had bestowed it on you immediately, while you are in this passive state of waiting. You would be a victim of it. The lottery perspective contends that money is required to resolve one's problems. According to the kingdom mindset, I must have the ability to solve the world's problems. Money is simply the tool that I use to accomplish this. It's unlikely that God will grant you a lottery win. He is too fond of you to treat you like a charity case. He will give you something that is both permanent and hazardous. He is assigning you a task. This billionaire transition does not compensate for your anguish. It is a deployment for your future. We should go back to the manual. Verse 18 of Deuteronomy chapter 8. I have previously addressed this issue. However, we must address this verse immediately. It is said that he gives you the ability to accumulate wealth. When we read the word power in English, we usually interpret it as permission. We believe that God is giving you the opportunity to become wealthy. No, the Hebrew term used there is coach. Pray that in your heart, coach. It is a muscular and reptile-related term. It implies that a lizard's tail can be regenerated, indicating its vitality. It suggests the stamina of a bovine capable of plowing a field for 12 hours without rest. Coach is not a check that comes in the mail. Coach serves as a power plant. It is a divine generator that is implanted in your spirit and creates abundance out of thin air. God does not provide you with fruit when He gives you coach. He's providing you with the root system. He is equipping you with the ability to observe a crisis and identify a solution worth billions. He is offering you the fortitude to deal with the stress of high-level decision-making. He has given you the authority to command that resources be delivered to you. Therefore, instead of searching for the product, inspect your engine. You are frustrated because you are requesting apples from God while He is attempting to establish an orchard within your bosom. He does not want you to have money for an extended period. He desires that you have the ability to generate wealth for future generations. He desires that you be a fountain, not a puddle. A pool anticipates precipitation. A fountain is powered by an underground, invisible source that propels water upward. You're moving from puddle thinking to fountain thinking. You may be wondering, what about the years I lost? Or what about the struggle? What is the current status of the debt that is weighing heavily on me? You're being heard. This brings us to the most powerful concept in the entire broadcast. This establishes the legal foundation for the billionaire transition. Shalom is a Hebrew concept. The word's root is shalom, which is commonly associated with the concept of harmony. However, its meaning is much more aggressive. It expresses completeness. It means restitution, but in biblical law, restitution is never one-on-one. The law requires a criminal who is apprehended to repay the stolen property sevenfold. He must not only repay the amount he took, but also pay interest, penalties, and damages. Consider the last decade of your life. Consider the tension, the sleepless nights, the missed opportunities, and the strained relationships caused by financial hardship. That was not simply a case of bad luck. That was theft. Your potential has been snatched by the devourer, your opponent. Fortunately, there is some good news. God is the just arbiter, and He has reviewed your life's records. He witnessed the crime and issued a decree of shalom. This suggests that the billionaire shift that occurs for you is not arbitrary. Back pay is the term. It is interest calculated retroactively on each tear you have shed. It represents the sevenfold return on each seed planted in the earth during the famine. For a brief moment, imagine a courtroom in paradise. The gavel has just been lowered. The judge made a favorable decision on your behalf. The antagonist has been directed to repay the debt. This is the cause of the significant change. It's not just your salary. It is the culmination of generations of righteous struggle in your lineage. They are now receiving the wealth that the wicked had previously amassed. However, there is one caveat. This is the conclusion you must understand. Shalom is in your grasp. This is the impending deluge. Coach is accessible to you. This is the capacity to produce. However, Coach requires a framework to facilitate the flow of information. A grid is required for the distribution of electricity. Pipes are required for water. If the Hoover Dam released all of its water today and you could only capture it with a garden hose, the hose would explode due to the pressure. The majority of the chosen are now standing beneath the floodgates of paradise, each holding a spoon. You're requesting an ocean. However, your emotional capacity, management systems, habits, and structure are all designed to hold a teaspoon. If God answers your prayer today, the blessing will become a curse. It would evict you. Therefore, the question is not whether God will provide the funds. The question is, do you have the utensil or bucket? Do you own the war treasury, or do you just have a checking account? In the coming minutes, I will demonstrate how to construct the container. I will give you the blueprint for the 3-account system that will elevate you from consumer to commander. To construct this container, you must mentally accompany me to a specific location. I'd like you to imagine yourself in a peaceful setting, seated at a substantial oak workstation. Clutter is absent. There are no unpaid invoices scattered across the surface. You are presented with a laptop that is currently connected to your banking interface. There is no such thing as delusion. This serves as a foreshadowing of your upcoming circumstances. There isn't a single checking account on the screen for you to frantically swipe your card against until it declines. That's the behavior of a castaway, not a steward. Rather, you see 3 separate vaults. This 3-account system regulates the flow of billionaire shifts. The repository is the initial account. This is not a savings account. This is a sacred account. In ancient times, the storehouse was where the initial produce was stored. The portion belonged to God. When the transfer has an impact on your life, the money must first be moved into the storehouse. This is your seed, offering, and tithe. For what reason? As a result of eating the first portion, the rest of the harvest is cursed. You are telling God that I have more faith in my intestines than in your supply. Your spiritual insurance policy is the storehouse. It asserts that you are a channel and not a dam. The military chest represents the second account. This is the one that is absent. This is why you are still having difficulty. The war treasury is not intended for spending. It's not for a new car. It is not meant for a vacation. It's intended for coach. It's the capital. It's ammunition. This cash is sitting in this location, waiting for a divine command to spread. It is the capital used to buy land, start a business, or invest in kingdom initiatives. It serves as the groundwork for your future empire. You will not have a future if you consume your spawn. The war chest is where you can demonstrate your ability to be trusted with power. Bread is the final account. This is meant for your use. This is for your shelter, food, and clothes. Live on this. The impoverished mindset's fatal error is that any incoming funds are immediately transferred to the bread account. You eat all foods. As a result, you may question why you lack authority. The protocol for the billionaire shift reverses this flow. Prior to the war treasury, funds are received at the storehouse. The bread is the sole recipient of the remaining portion. To govern with the surplus, one must first learn to live on the remainder. You may be thinking, but I barely have enough for bread right now. How can I divide it into 3 equal portions? Chosen one, you do not need to wait until you are wealthy to start this system. You set up this system with the intention of accumulating wealth. Even if you only have $10, divide it. $1 to the storehouse, $2 to the war chest, and $7 for bread. So, before the billion arrives, you are creating the neural pathways of a billionaire in your brain. You're repairing the opening in your bucket. I must demonstrate the importance of this matter. I'm going to tell you a story about a man named Michael. This is an authentic story. Michael, like you, was a chosen one. For 20 years, he prayed for a breakthrough. He was generous and caring, but he lacked a vessel. He did not have a war chest. The breakthrough happened in one day.